Hey everybody, welcome to Texas 2.5. Today we are going to break out an old, neglected, forgotten friend. My Weber 22.5-inch Smoky Mountain cooker. I got this earlier this summer while I was waiting on my Lone Star grill to show up. This guy popped up on Craigslist for 160 bucks and it was barely used and I couldn't turn that deal down. So I grabbed him. About a month ago, I did a test run with a bag of Royal Oak Ridge charcoal. I made a video of that, which you might have seen on my channel. I'll post the link down below. But today I'm going to do the first cook on it. I've been so busy with my Lone Star for the last couple of months that I have completely neglected our old buddy here. Although I have put a lot of cool mods on him, like a wheel kit and some cool tool handles and a lid hinge kit. So I've done a few mods on it, but I haven't cooked on it yet. So today we're going to get down to business. We're going to do a nice big bone-in pork butt, as well as a smaller beef roast that we're going to make pulled beef out of. So tonight for dinner we're having pulled pork and pulled beef. Let's get started. Alright y'all, meat is on. Let's check it out. Alright, we got our 9.5 pound, I think it was 9.5 pound, 9 something, bone-in pork butt on the left. We have a 2.5 pound beef eye of round roast on the right. I have a drip pan. I'm not using it for the sake of water smoking. I am using it for the sake of catching my drippings so that I can reincorporate those later. When this pork hits 160, I'm going to put it back into those liquids and cook it the rest of the way braising, and then I'm going to pull it in all those liquids. So that's why I'm using water. I'm not a water smoker, but I do like to save my drippings some of the time and use them when I pull beef or pull pork especially. You'll notice that I have my new Maverick XR-50 set up, and again I'll put a link below to that video reviewing this product during the first cook here with it. But so far so good. It's let's see, top left is the beef temperature, bottom left is the pork temperature, top right is the top grate, and bottom right is the bottom grate temperatures. So quite a bit hotter down on the bottom grate, as you can see, but it's because I've had my lid open for quite some time. So let's get her shut down. See you soon. Alright, we're about an hour and a half into this cook. My temps have been running really high. I had to completely shut 2 of the bottom vents. The third one I have open less than a pencil width, like tiny bit, because my temps were running up above 300, 325, and they were still climbing. I even had to shut down my top vent about 1/3 of the way, which I normally don't like to do at all. And I'm actually, now that I've stabilized, it's taken me about 30 minutes to stabilize at 275. I'm just going to put those back open so I don't risk bad smoke, yucky smoke. Anyhow, the Maverick is running great, doing a great job for me. But the main thing here on the meat video is the pork butt and the beef, and those are both coloring up nicely. I came back out and added a half a gallon of water soon after I started this cook because there wasn't nearly enough liquid in that pan. It would have burned off really quickly at those high temps. But what we got going on, the Maverick is telling me that the beef is at 136 and the pork is still only up to 29 degrees. Alright y'all, we're 3 hours in on this pork butt and this beef. The beef is up to 160, which means in just another 30 degrees, I'm going to go ahead and pull that baby, or at least I'll probe for tenderness at that point. Might need to go a little bit further, but at 190 I have my alarm set to come out and check it. The beef is at 99, I'm sorry, the pork is at 99 degrees. It definitely caught some momentum and some steam since the last time, whenever it was only 29 degrees. It quickly started rising in temperature once that frozen spot in the middle disappeared. I'll probably wrap that around 140. As you can see, I have an alarm set. Maybe I'll let it get up to 150 and wrap it and let her finish the rest of the way. The Weber Smoky Mountain grates are only half a degree difference right now, which is incredible because when I started this cook this morning, it started hot and fast. Again, I don't use water in my smokers, usually. Very rarely do I water smoke. And so I usually run hot and fast, and I'm okay with that. But the dome temp was about 275. The top grate was about 319, and the middle grate was like 370. So almost 100 degrees difference between the dome and the middle grate when I first started this morning. And that's the exact opposite of most smokers. Everything tends to run hotter at the top because heat rises, but the Weber Smoky Mountain, for whatever reason, maybe it's because I don't use water. Maybe if I used water, that would flip-flop and the top would be hotter than the bottom grate. But just be aware of that if you're new to the Weber Smoky Mountain like I am. It's the opposite of what you might expect. The bottom grate is significantly hotter when you're first getting started up than your top grate or your dome temps. But as I said, now that I'm 3 hours into the cook and everything is stabilized, the grates, the top grate has been running right around 290 for a solid hour and a half to 2 hours now, and that bottom grate has dropped way down to where the top grate is at. So those have evened out quite a bit. So if you can get your top grate temp, which for me is my top right quadrant, if you can get that steady for a long period of time, then your bottom grate will come into line with that eventually, which is what has happened for me. Let's take a quick peek at the pork. Peek at the pork. Oh yeah, getting crusty, starting to split here, as you can see. Anyhow, pork's looking good. Sorry about the lighting and the not focusing that first time, but there you can see it's looking a lot better. One thing I do notice on this one is that, and this really, I didn't expect this. This strikes me as interesting, but one thing I've noticed is the fact that this thing has been running, that grate that the meat is on has been around 300 all day, 290-ish. Is what it's running at right now. Earlier it was a little above 300, but that's about the same temp I run my top grate at on my LSG when I cook pork. And at the same temperature, right around 300 degrees, using all hardwood on the LSG, I have a much more significant bark on the pork, even after just an hour and a half. It's already starting to get blackened up real nicely in several spots on the LSG, whereas here we're over 3 hours in at 300, and that pork has basically no black or chocolate anywhere on it. It's turning a nice deep red, but it definitely colors differently at a different rate, for sure, than on the old offset. So that's one factor of using a charcoal smoker. Even though I did put I forgot to tell you this, I did put 4 or 5 pecan chunks in the charcoal when I first started it. Nonetheless, you're not going to get as dark of a color, as rich of a bark on a charcoal cooker as you are on a traditional offset where you're just burning sticks the whole time. That has been communicated loud and clear. That's the first thing I noticed when I came out here for the 1 hour check was, wow, that meat still looks raw. An hour in on my LSG and I'm already starting to form bark on the outside and really great color. So it'll still taste great. It'll still have pretty good bark by the end of it, but that's one of the differences of cooking with a purely charcoal smoker versus my Lone Star Grill's 20x42 offset burning oak and cherry all day long. All right, y'all, 5 hours in. The 5 hour mark, we are looking at almost 180 on our beef. So we'll be pulling that and wrapping it soon and letting it rest as long as it probes tender. And we're almost at 145 on our pork, so we still have a few hours to go on that. And I did stir the charcoal an hour ago at the 4-hour mark, and I added some more hickory chunks to go with the pecan I was using earlier. Let's take a look. After an hour of those hickory chunks, we have much better bark. Beautiful on the beef. Man, that is looking absolutely delicious. That pork butt is looking great. That is some nice bark on top and on the side, the front here. That split is starting to seal up. Oh yeah. That is going to be some eating when it's time to pull it and wrap it and mix it in with all those drippy goodnesses down there. I'm going to mix some fun things in that liquid before we mix our meat into it, so y'all stay tuned for that. Alright y'all, we are almost at 6 hours, and we are also almost at 190 on our beautiful, beautiful Eye of Round roast. My only regret about this Eye of Round roast is how small it got. 2.5 pounds wasn't that big to begin with, but there's my hand, and I'm not a giant. This thing has shrunk up pretty good. It's about 6 inches long now and about 3 inches across. You can see my Thermopop is much bigger than this roast, but we'll enjoy it nonetheless. I'm going to take a quick secondary temperature just to double check. And I may have gone in too far. I often do that. I don't know how you guys are so quick with these Thermopops, knowing the exact depth to hit dead center, coolest part of the meat. I never get it quite that precise. As you can see, I'm still dropping here. 189, and top left 188.1. So I'd say the Maverick and the Thermopop are right on board with one another. Look, there we are, 188. Pulled it out just a hair further. So they are definitely agreeing with one another. The most important thing, however, is tenderness. And the thicker part of this feels a little bit less tender. The Thermopop doesn't just come right out. However, when I was probing over here, this side feels much, much more tender all the way around. It's just this one area right in here that feels a little bit tight. However, I think I'm still going to pull it because I'm planning on wrapping it in some Pyrex and tinfoil with a can of broth and some barbecue sauce and just letting it rest in the oven. And it'll cook a little bit further. And again, the majority of it is tender all the way down the left side and across the back side. It's just this larger puffy area here that's a little bit tighter. But it's still, honestly, it's tender enough for my liking. So I'm going to get our tongs, I'm going to pull it, I'm going to wrap it, and we'll let her sit in the oven for about another hour, and she'll get a little more tender in there. All right, here's what we got going down. Beef broth. Just going to pour that in the bottom here. All over the top. I actually think I'm going to reserve about 1/4 of that can because I want just the right amount of liquid so that when I pull this, all the meat and liquid sort of dissolve into one another. I think if I put any more liquid in, I'm going to have too much. This is the sauce I'm going down with. John Henry's East Texas Pecan Barbecue Sauce. We've tried this a couple times over the last couple of weeks and absolutely love it. Great stuff if you can find it. And all I'm going to do now after I just coat this bad boy is put a piece of heavy tinfoil over the top of that, pop it in my oven which will be off. I'm not trying to cook anymore. I'm just trying to let this rest in an insulated environment. And in about an hour or so, we will pull it. All right, y'all. I just put the beef in the oven. You saw me do that a minute ago. Immediately came outside. Our pork was at 160. This was the drippings pan over here that's been catching the juices all day long. I decided to go ahead and get a new pan. The drippings have a lot of yucky looking stuff floating around in it this time, and I didn't want to just use that straight juice. So what I did was I mixed sweet tea 50-50 with some apple cherry juice from Old Orchard. Poured a little bit of that around here. Poured a little bit of Lambert's sweet sauce of mine in, and a good squirt of mustard. And I mixed that all up and took the pork butt out of here where I had it resting for a minute while I was working. Plopped it into this new foil, new juice, and we're going to go ahead and pop that back on the smoker and let her rock and roll for the last couple hours here to get this baby up from 160 up to 200. All right, we're at the 7-hour mark, and we have epically stalled. It's not the meat itself that has stalled, it's the fact that I added that cold liquid to a new foil pan, and essentially we had to start from scratch on the temperature of that liquid. So it has taken nearly an hour, about 45 minutes, for this 300-degree cooker to get this pork moving again. I'm hoping now that it's wrapped up and everything's hot and good to go that we'll be back in business and rocking and rolling, and that we can get her finished up in the 200 range here in a couple hours or less. That means we won't be having it for dinner tonight. We'll be having the pulled beef, but we'll have pulled pork for Sunday dinner tomorrow. So looking good. In case you're wondering, most of what I'm using today is Royal Oak's Chef Select briquettes, which are supposed to be, I think, their nicest charcoal. And those briquettes are about double the weight of the normal Red Bag Ridge briquettes. But like I said, I used probably about 10 pounds of the Chef Select, maybe 12 pounds. And then I used a complete chimney full of the regular Royal Oak red briquettes to light my chimney. The reason I did that is because I was trying to save half a bag of that Chef Select stuff for another future cook. But I'm going to go ahead. I have just a little bit of the red stuff left here. I'm going to go ahead and throw that in the bottom of the Weber Smoky Mountain to make sure that we get this pork to 200 before we run out of fuel. All right, y'all, here's the finished product on the pulled beef. If you remember, this was the Eye of Round roast. We took it up, I think it was close to 190 when we pulled it, if I remember right. I've already forgotten. That was about an hour and a half ago. It was resting in the oven for the past hour and a half. After about 45 minutes, I changed my mind and I turned the oven on 200 because I was worried that this would be a little tougher than pulled pork. And unfortunately, when I probed it, it did tighten up a bit. It did not get any more tender in the oven, and it honestly felt a little bit tougher even than when I took it out of the smoker in this tough zone. So it's probably going to end up being sliced beef over here and more of the pulled tender stuff over here, but that's okay. That sauce and glaze set up beautifully, and we're hungry, so we're going to eat. Barbecue doesn't have to be perfect. And this will turn into sliced beef instead of pulled, but that's okay. Beautiful, beautiful smoke ring on this Eye of Round. Again, a really nice glaze on that. I will cut a slice off of this end piece and give her a taste. Do you need to see my face for me to taste for you? Here goes. Yep, it's a little bit tougher than pulled pork, but it's still very tender. It does have a good roast flavor, but it has that nice barbecue beef smoke and sauce glaze. It's really tasty. I like it. I'm not going to exaggerate it. I'm not going to overkill it. It's not the best barbecue I've ever had in my life, but let's take a piece from this more tender end and Wow. Really thick smoke ring on that guy. Nice glaze. Let's give him a little run through the sauce there. I think this eye of round would be awesome for making burnt ends. Just make the whole thing into burnt ends. Here we go. That's delicious. Tender, full beefy flavor, and with the barbecue profile on it, that pecan wood and hickory we used, the John Henry's pecan sauce with the beef broth. Hey, this is A-okay. We're going to like this. So I sliced it a little bit thinner than you would slice brisket. Awesome smoke ring, really good beef flavor. Drizzled some of that John Henry's across the top. We're going to au jus the rest of it. Maybe au jus this too. We're going to have us some beef sandwiches, y'all. It's going to be good. All right, here's the quick bite. Eye of round, French's crispy fried onions, dill pickle, and John Henry's barbecue sauce. It might be sliced, but it's still good. I pulled that beef through the au jus, poured on some more barbecue sauce. These are giant Hawaiian style sweet rolls, hamburger buns. Awesome. Let's check that pork. All right, y'all. It's 9 p.m. Y'all ready for the big pork reveal? Here it is. All right, I took this pork off the smoker. I think it was about 7:45, and that means it cooked from 10:15 a.m. to 7:45 p.m. So what is that? 7:45 plus 1:45. That's about 9.5 hours. And we're about to see the big reveal. I've left it in its foil pan and tinted, cooling out in the garage so it didn't stink up my whole house since we had already had dinner. And I have not looked at it yet, so this is the first glimpse for me as well as you. And oh baby, that is looking some goodness. See that big old bone trying to poke out of there? Oh. Looky there, y'all. Try not to drip this all over my kitchen counter. Let's see, we got a little flake right here. Oh. Chef's treat. There's some good bark on that one. That one chunk there came off. Totally clean bone. Just pulls right apart. Nothing to it. Delicious, fatty, juicy. Got a whole bunch of juice down here to reincorporate into this meat. I'm going to cool it overnight all together after I pull it. Once it's all cooled down and all this liquid is firmed up tomorrow, I'm going to put it in food saver bags and vacuum pack it. If you do that while it's still juicy, you make a big mess with your food saver. But if you mix all this meat and juice together, cool it so that all that fat hardens up in the meat, and then vacuum pack it, well, the next time you reheat that meat, all of this juicy goodness is going to be there for you with no mess. Oh boy. So the first piece I had was bark. This one was one of the internal juicy pieces. This piece here has the best of both worlds. Good bark, good smoke ring, juicy bottom layer. That's good, y'all. And based on my last pork video that I did at that party where I had so much juice incorporated into that meat, I would not be surprised if this is better the second time than it is tonight once I get all those juices mixed in. Anyhow, it is just falling apart in my fingers. I'm going to get to pulling this. Y'all have seen that before. And when I'm done pulling it, maybe I'll give you one final shot. All right, y'all, here's the beautiful final tally. I transferred it to a new pan again. We use a lot of tin foil around here. You might want to go to Costco and get yourself the 30 or 36 pack or whatever it is. We like those. Good deal. Like 30 cents a piece. Cheaper than the dollar store even. Here's the waste. Very little waste. Most of this is bone, as you can see. And just a little bit of scraps that I pulled out of there. And when you account for all the liquid I poured back in, there's really very little waste on these pork butts the way that I do them by reserving a lot of the liquid. This is pretty much full, this half sheet pan or half lasagna pan or whatever they call these, I don't even know. So I'm going to put some foil over it, put her in the fridge, again let all that goodness congeal and firm up, and then tomorrow I'll divide this probably into thirds and make 3 different frozen meal bags out of it. Real simple on the food saver. So thank you for joining me for today's cook. Just a reminder, there is a short review video on the Maverick XR-50 that I did in conjunction with today's pork cook, and that's a separate video. Again, the link will be below. But I hope you enjoyed the pork cook. One last thought on that beef. That's the first time I've smoked a beef roast. The only beef I've smoked before. Okay, you caught me in the middle of a sneeze. As I was saying, the only beef that I have smoked before is brisket. And brisket is very unique. There's nothing like it in beef. It has its own unique thing going on that is just out of this world delicious when you do one right. However, even though that eye of round roast we smoked is a leaner cut, and I didn't quite get it as tender as I would want. I think next time I'll wrap it around 160 as well. I was just being lazy today on that, honestly. And it still was good, though, even though it didn't turn into pulled beef. Slicing it very thinly and putting a couple of those nice smoke-ringed eye of round slices on a sandwich like I did earlier was delicious. It's really cool how, even though it's still beef, it has its own thing going on. It's not like brisket at all. It does have more of a roast-y thing going on. If you like beef roasts, if you have beef roasts for Sunday dinner like we do a lot and like I did a lot as a kid growing up, roast just has its own unique texture and flavor. And even though we rubbed it and we smoked it and got an awesome smoke ring and put a beautiful glaze on it, those roast characteristics still come through. And it made for a really pleasant beef sandwich because it had some texture to it. That's one of my complaints about overdone brisket. When it gets too soft and you try to eat it on a sandwich, there's nothing there to sort of chew on. And I enjoy super tender brisket, like burn-ins or even slices by themselves, but on a sandwich that's not so pleasant. I like a little bit of bite there in a sandwich, and smoking a beef roast does a little better on that for you, I think, especially the leaner roasts like Eye of Round. So if you've never tried that before, give it a try. Like I said, you could also try experimenting with it and making it into burn-ins. But the way we did it, sliced up on sandwiches, was awesome with those crunchy French fried onions on there and some barbecue sauce. Doing it sort of like Western style, Western burger style beef sandwich. Good stuff. Give it a try. You'll love it. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time. Texas 2.5.